So welcome to InSights and InPerson, How to Clean Your Silver with Melissa de Bie, who's our Director of Collections Access and our Senior Registrar. Thank you for joining us. And to begin, in the spirit of healing and education, we acknowledge the 48 contemporary tribes with historic ties to the state of Colorado. These tribes are our partners. We consult with them when we plan exhibits, collect, preserve, and interpret artifacts, do archaeological work, and create educational programs. We recognize these Indigenous peoples as the original inhabitants of this land. My name is Bethany Williams, and I am one of the Collections Access Coordinators of the Stephen H. Hart Research Center at History Colorado. The Stephen H. Hart Research Center is the public access portal for researching History Colorado's collection. We dynamically assist researchers from all backgrounds with exploring our images, archives, and artifacts to use for a multitude of projects such as genealogical research, historic property designation, school assignments, design inspiration, and writing books. You can find out more via our Research Center page. I'm also the coordinator of the InSights and InPerson How-To series, a series which focuses on sharing collection resources and staff expertise and workshops, tutorials, and lectures so that you can connect with History Colorado's collection and learn to better care for your own pieces of history. We are going to be taking a break from the how-to programs for the holidays, and we'll return with more InSights and InPerson how-to programs later in January, so keep an eye out for that in the new year. In the meantime, consider joining us for Historical Table Holidays at Home. You'll leave this program with a digital party planning kit full of recipes, activities, costume ideas, and more to host your very own online 1910s winter celebration. There are many other great programs coming up, including today's This Is What Democracy Looks Like presentations, and the upcoming InSights and InPerson Connections, featuring pioneer preservationist Dana Crawford talking about the transformative project she's been involved in over the decades. As mentioned, please keep your mic and video off through the slideshow presentation. There will be an opportunity to ask questions later. If you haven't already purchased a silver kit, there's still the opportunity to do so. We'll be sending a follow-up email with information from today. Thank you for joining us, Melissa. I am excited for this training, and although I don't have my silver ready, I did also purchase a kit. And with that, Melissa, we're ready for you, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn my stuff off.
All right, let me get my screen going. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I have been at History Colorado for a little over 11 years, and I have cleaned a couple pieces of silver here. We've had a few workshops in the past. Normally it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So we have condensed it quite a bit. So I will try to zip through some of the front information so that we can dig into our pieces and do some show and tell and actually get to the nitty gritty. I've worked at natural history museums. I've worked at art museums in small historical societies, historic houses, and I have used this in other places. Cleaning silver in this way is not a lot of people do it, I think, because it's more work. Buying silver polish is easier and it's quicker, and everybody knows that. But I'm not sharing huge trade secrets today. A lot of this is readily available online, and you can do it with some discretion and just being careful. And as long as we're not scrubbing pieces with Brillo pads, you'll be okay. So the first part, just to let you know, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about different types of metal because a lot of them are going to be alloys, and typically nobody is really going to have pure silver. That's pretty expensive, pretty rare, and not a lot of people use that because it's not very versatile. So we're going to talk about the metals themselves, ideas for what I would suggest, what typical conservators would suggest, things to look for that are okay, things that are not okay, when to call for help. And that's the other thing too. I have previously trained with a conservator, and starting at History Colorado, our local go-to conservator, she has worked with staff to teach us how to do all of this. And they're fully aware that there are certain things that we can do on our own, and there are definitely times where you want to call somebody, so we can talk about that. In general, there are a lot of typical materials that are seen and used in the house, typical antiques, typical things that people have. Brass and bronze are some of the more commonly seen. Brass is an alloy, so that means it's a combo metal. It's made of different things, usually copper and zinc. When it's polished, it's usually shiny and gold. And oftentimes you can tell the difference between brass and bronze by the color and the weight. Brass is cheaper and it's used more because of that. So horns, for example, are often some type of brass alloy. Bronze is usually going to be darker, it's going to be heavier, and it's usually copper and tin. And there's no perfect quantity for what the alloys are either. So different manufacturers had different alloy quantities. And, you know, even when you get into older items and handmade items, it's all custom. So that's why sometimes it's a combination of this and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's hard to tell and sometimes it's easy. But those are usually how I distinguish. A lot of the heavier, a lot of the sculptures and things like that are going to be usually bronze. Copper is more common, reddish orange color material used in wiring, jewelry, and usually mixed with a lot of other things. Gold is pretty soft, like silver. It's a basic yellow metal. It is a little heavier, most often used in jewelry. What you'll often see too is that gold and silver are now used in a lot of computer equipment. And so I'll talk about that a little bit later. It's soft. Just like silver, it is also soft and usually mixed with other things. So that's why jewelry, you'll often see they're mixed with different things. I mean, that's what white gold is, right? It's not pure, just because pure solid materials are often too malleable to be functional and too expensive. Iron is going to be a pretty common metal. You often will see rust very easily. It's not rare. It's not often used in its pure form. It also is used in combinations with different things, most often to make steel. Lead, nickel, pewter, steel, tin. These are the more silver colored metals. And this is where we kind of get into the range of what these are versus what silver is. Lead is also a really soft material. It's going to be dull gray in color. It can be polished though, and it's pretty heavy. Nickel is often what we see mixed with silver a lot. It's because it's corrosion resistant. It's lighter. It has that silver color. Sometimes it's a little yellow though, but it's often mixed to do plating. So coins, other alloys for stainless steel, we'll talk about that, but that's where you see a lot of nickel. Pewter is another alloy made from tin and usually copper. Sometimes I've seen lead and antimony, or antimony, however you want to say it. You often see that in old tchotchkes and little figurines, things like that, little pewter figures. Steel is an alloy of iron mixed with some other things. It's hard, it's strong, of course it's industrial. Some things, depending on the alloy and the concentrations, sometimes it can rust, but usually not. And so that's why you see a lot of surgical and stainless steel, like the table that I'm sitting at right now. Tin is something that's oftenly seen and mixed with one of the yellow metals to make bronze, but it also does not tarnish or rust. That is just to give you a really brief breakdown of kind of the yellow and the silver metals, just so that you understand what the combinations are. And when you're talking about mass manufacturing materials in metal and in cheap, you see all kinds of combinations of metals just because companies would use whatever was easiest to find, whatever was cheapest to make, etc. And so you will often hear terms of, like, if you're trying to identify things and what type of metal it is, sometimes you can't figure it out. If there are no marks, sometimes you can't really distinguish what the thing is from the look or how it is discolored or tarnished. And that's because you'll hear a lot of terms like junk metal or pot metal, trash metal, things like that, is because oftentimes companies would just mix all kinds of stuff to make things, and you just don't know. But in general, when you see enough silver items, you typically know just from looking at it and from feeling it, etc. You'll see, just like with jewelry, you'll look for a stamp on the bottom. You can go to any library, you can go online. There are tons of reference and resource materials for looking up trademarks, company stamps, numbers, etc., especially on silver and plated and sterling items, because we all have those references now. So you'll often see company names stamped onto the bottom of materials. You might see the word sterling, you might see the word plate, you might see numbers, and that sometimes correlates to the purity quality of the silver. Silver often also has a really pretty look when it's tarnished, to be honest. And I'm going to I pulled a sample material, and I don't know if you're going to get that online. You might with the lighting in here, but you can see silver and silver plated items often get that pretty rainbow look when they're discolored and tarnished. That's pretty typical of silver. It usually reacts that way. Silver often does not stay silver either. It turns dark, just like this. Let me turn this off too, and I'll get close so you can see. Block my face here. So it's not going to stay the same color just because it reacts to the environment. And so we'll talk about what it reacts to, but silver is also, it's often going to be dark. Silver is not magnetic. You can do a magnet test. You could do a silver acid test or a bleach test. I don't recommend this, but I know I've seen it online. Bleach, they sell specialty tests. Like if you go to a pawn shop, they'll have like a chemical test, and that's how they test silver. Bleach will do the same thing. Bleach will react to silver and discolor it in a certain way. And then color too, just like I talked about with the patina, the silver, the pretty rainbow tarnish colors. But in general, silver is a soft, shiny metal. And so it's used because it's very aesthetic when it's polished. It can be highly reflective, and it does tarnish easily. It's used a lot in jewelry. It's conductive, so it's used in a lot of electronics as well, like computer equipment. And like I said before, most silver is not pure. It's mixed with something else, just because silver is too soft to be useful at anything. So what kind of silver is it? And I'm going to get quicker here. Silver, most things are going to be silver plated. That's the process of bonding a thin layer of silver to a base metal. So they might use a junk metal, they might use a pewter or a tin or something else, or even brass. It just depends. And they'll plate it, and they'll coat plates, layers of silver on top. And usually they're thin layers of silver, and that makes it cheaper. It's more affordable to do that. So oftentimes silverware might be plated. Tea sets are sometimes plated, and you'll often see the EP, the EPNS on the bottom for electroplating, because that's the process. You'll also see, the one thing that I'll try to show too, you'll often see on, I think you can see this a little bit here, on some pieces that have been somebody scrubbed them or they've cleaned them too many times, you'll see that the plating is wearing off, and you'll be able to tell. And you'll get usually, oftentimes it's a yellow or a dull silver color underneath. And so you definitely know that something is plated then, and that tells you how thin that plate level is, the plate layer, because you can rub right through it. Purity, and commonly, this is where I want to throw in stainless, because that's the question that a lot of people have. So these numbers that I have up on the screen, these are purity levels. So purest form available, 0.999, 99%. Then you drop down. There was a certain English company that used, they were almost like a trademark quality and combo of silver, 958. That's pretty common for that that type in that company. Sterling silver is usually 92% and up. And even there are variances based on where something was made, what the company was, what the company did. But 92% and up is typically what we call sterling. So it's usually that higher quality of silver because there's more silver. So the percent is based on the amount of silver there is mixed with something else. So that explains why oftentimes sterling is considered to be more expensive, more lucrative, because there's usually more silver. 835 is a common European blend for a lot of different companies, and then whatever goes down from there. What causes the discoloration? What causes tarnish? Basically, it's the environment. It's natural. There is no way to avoid it. It's just like with other metals, you can say tarnish, you can say discolored. Rust is not really something that is used for silver, but I threw that on there because that is the same type of it's a chemical process where the environment causes, the environment eats away at the metal, basically. And unlike rust and iron, rust for iron will make the item completely disappear. It could completely eat it away. Silver, because most things are plated, you'll just eat away at the silver plate and then the junk metal will be left underneath. But tarnish and discoloration for silver are caused by basic things that you can't avoid and you can't get rid of. Oxygen, moisture, contaminants in the air from your furnace, smoke for us is a big one. And just to show you, I'm going to get my gloves on because we're getting ready. But speaking of the environment, don't feel bad because the environment is the same. I'm gonna do this with my screen as well, and see if I can. I'll show this in a minute after I turn off my presentation. But don't feel, it's not, museums have the same problem as everybody does in their house, and I will show you examples for that. So we just try to slow the deterioration down. We try to minimize it and make it go slower, but it's unavoidable. To clean or to not clean. I have some examples of this too. Sometimes there are reasons that you might want to clean. And I made this a couple of years ago and did a lot of talks at some of our community museums that have historic houses. But sometimes you want a better aesthetic. Sometimes you want the silver to look cleaner and nicer, and that's okay. Sometimes if you're fixing it or repairing it, it's a stark contrast to something that's repaired versus the piece that's not cleaned or the parts that are not cleaned. So you might want to do that. Maybe there's wax on it. Maybe there's old chemicals on the silver and you have to clean those off. Oftentimes, it's safer to not clean something. The patina is natural. The piece looks better with a patina and discolored. Oftentimes, because the environment doesn't go away and tarnish is natural, sometimes the tarnish helps protect it longer than it does if it was cleaned. It might be too decorative. It might be too fancy and too many nooks and crannies. That it's not wise to clean it. Sometimes it's mixed with other pieces, like if it's mixed with jewels or other organic materials or other different composites, you might not be able to clean it. And it takes time to do it the right way. And it's hard. So there are some reasons to clean or not clean. I think in my 11-year time period at HC, I have only cleaned something for an exhibit once. We don't have the resources to clean our silver. It would be nice. We've cleaned, I know that other staff have cleaned things at some of our house museums because there's a different exhibit aesthetic and need. But we don't typically do this. And sometimes it's better to not do this. Cleaning methods, non-preferred, any commercial silver cleaner or spray. You don't want to scrub it with a Brillo pad. No kitchen scrubber here. Toothpaste is what I used to do in high school. And there's some reason to this, but because some toothpaste actually have calcium carbonate in them. So that's why it actually works. However, there are other abrasives and there are other materials in toothpaste that make it something you don't want to do. Tinfoil and baking soda, that's an old school. Really, the only ways to safely clean are super time consuming or expensive. The Quicksilver are like the chemical bath dips that often conservators will use, like the picture that I showed. I would love to have that, but it's super expensive and time intensive. Solvents and calcium carbonate are the way that we go if we need to clean something. And that's what conservators do too. If we send something, this is exactly what a conservator would do, what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to stop and I'm going to briefly stop sharing and I'm going to turn my video off, my back screen. And this is the time, I think, for you all to turn your videos on and get ready. Get your gloves on. Get your pieces out. Get your materials. And we're going to go through the steps of first using solvents and then using a slurry. And you can see I'm in storage. And so I'm going to present screen again and go back in, just so that I can show some things. So before, when I talked about the museum environment is the same as, if not the same environment. I went to look for silver examples through storage last week to use for the program. And I pulled this from our storage at HCC downtown. And that when we talk about preventing tarnish, one of the other things that you'll see is that you don't want silver to come into contact with anything. Unfortunately, when I found this piece, it had our tag sitting on top of it. So that outline that you see is our tag. It's our rectangle tag that we use in the museums. So this happened in the last we moved in 7 years ago, and this happened within the last 7 years. So it happens. And this is the piece I'm going to clean today too, because I think it will show a huge difference. So I'm going to talk through this first step. You can use, you've got distilled water and the typical household solvents. That's the first step. You're going to be just wiping it down with a cotton pad. And to explain a little bit, ethanol, mineral spirits, and acetone are those household cleaners that are typical to use on a basic level. And you can also try just distilled water and soap too. Don't scrub it. You don't want to get too involved. But even just a wipe down, like I can wipe this and my gloves come off a little dirty. So I can clean some of this off with just water, probably distilled water. The key is to not let it sit in water. You want to dry it immediately. And you want to, if you're going to try a solvent, you want to wipe it off with water immediately as well. You don't want the solvents or any materials to sit on the silver. Ethanol, there were a couple questions about this, and I didn't think about this until we started hearing people couldn't find ethanol. It's because of sanitizer. So ethanol is ethyl alcohol. And I had to look this up this morning to confirm, because one of them you can drink and one of them you can't. Ethyl alcohol is basic grain alcohol. That's what they make liquor out of. That's basic alcohol, and you can drink it. It is very chemically closely related to isopropyl alcohol, which is rubbing alcohol from your house. So if you can't find true ethanol, you can use isopropyl alcohol. That's a close stand-in, and it works somewhat the same. The higher the percentage, the more effective, because there's more of the main ingredient. But that is why distilleries switched to making sanitizer when COVID hit, because they had the grain alcohol, and that's why you can't find it in the stores. So you might have rubbing alcohol, and that's all the same. You also want to look for as pure as you can get. I mentioned in the ingredient list, the supply list, you want to look for hardware acetone, the stuff that you get at Home Depot. Don't use nail polish remover. If it smells pretty or if it looks pretty, then that means there's something added to it that is not good for the silver. And honestly, using these three or even just one or two of them is up to you. You can use what you desire. I'm trying to get this open at the same time. I only use acetone because I think that does mostly what I need it to do, and it's quicker. So I'm just going to, and I didn't have enough bowls to pour this into, but I'm just going to do this onto my cotton pad. And I'm going to try to clean this in sections. Basically, if you're going to go along with me, you want to test a small spot. And so that's kind of what I'm going to do, because I'm going to do a small portion of it so that you can see the difference before and after. Have good workflow, because you are working with chemicals. The cotton swabs and the cotton pads are really what you can use. And again, you're just doing simple wipes. You can test a section and wipe as you go, and see what you get. See what it cleans off. If you get dirt coming off, you know that it's working, because it's either cleaning the tarnish or it's cleaning off dirt. And so when you're done with this step, you want to make sure to do a wipe down with distilled water afterwards. So even just with one, I cleaned this area here. Wait, wrong side. I got to do it backwards because I'm on camera. This side here. You can see the difference. I did that one little quarter, and that's just acetone. It didn't get rid of the phantom card. That I think is going to take some heavy duty stuff. But it got rid of a lot of it, and it's definitely changed color. And so at this point, we're going through the process, and hopefully you're going through this with us at the same time. Feel free to turn your cameras on. Feel free to unmute and ask questions. Let us know. I threw in pictures to show to you the difference that even just the solvents can make. The half picture there, and I'll even throw in this next one. Let's see.
So Melissa, a question has come in about denatured alcohol instead of ethanol. So denatured alcohol instead of ethanol.
You can definitely use that. Denatured just means it's a process that makes it consumable or not. That's essentially what that means. So this is another piece that I tried. Just the top. Someone has obviously cleaned the center way too much, because this is also a piece that I may not want to clean in the future because of all of the decoration. But you can see the final picture is with solvents and the slurry. You're still going to have some dark areas, and that's supposed to be normal because of the decoration. If you have something that heavily that with that much decor, you may choose not to do it. I pulled this as an example too, because I would never clean this because there are too many details. This would take so much time to get a Q-tip into every single, nook and cranny to try to make it look even and like it's supposed to. Like this, I would just leave, I would send this to a conservator or not do it, because that's the kind of detail that it would probably look funny if you had bright silver spots next to the darkened decorated areas. So at this point, we're halfway through, so we've got time. I showed you what acetone could do. I'm not going to demonstrate the other solvents because I don't really need to. I think once you try it out, you see, what happens when you just do basic wipes. You're not scrubbing, you're not scratching. The other thing to be careful of, again, they're solvents, so you wear gloves, well-ventilated area. Be careful of any jewelry, any watches or rings, because that will scratch the metal. Silver is soft. Questions? Anything anybody wants to show before I move on?
So another question is, when cleaning something like a bolo with turquoise, so obviously then it's kind of a mixed media or mixed item, what concerns would there be, or what suggestions would you have for something like that?
You can do that. I saw the jewelry on there, and it's not to say that you can't do the small decorative items. If you have the time and the energy, you can. You don't want to, the solvents, I cannot, this is where I should have, I don't remember if I did a disclaimer. I am not an expert and I am not a conservator. I know that the solvents are not going to work well with other materials. And so those might not be items that I choose to clean. Or I might skip to the slurry, the calcium carbonate, and try that, because that is likely going to be safer than the solvents are for other types of materials. Other rocks and things like turquoise and other organics are not going to do well with getting wet. They're not going to do well with other chemicals. But if you actually take the time and you use the Q-tips and try to get in there, you can try and you'll probably see a difference. You just have to be careful. And if it's something that is scary or you think is too much, then that's where the conservator comes in. We use the same kind of discretion and caution. It's not just time for us. Sometimes we know that we don't have the skill to do things and we send it out if it's something that we need to have done. The other tip that I'll give you about these nice, in the kit, if you have a kit, you got these nice wooden Q-tips, cut them off or use them, whittle them down and use them with a cotton ball and make your own Q-tips. Because these are nice to kind of get into, they're wood, they're sturdy. These are nice to get into the nooks and crannies. But there's a little tiny bit of cotton on there and you'll use that up pretty quickly. So reuse them with a cotton ball and make your own Q-tips, because we do that too. Any other questions? Does anybody want to show any work?
So going back to jewelry, someone had asked early on about cleaning a liquid silver necklace.
That I would simply take, if liquid silver means it's smooth, I think that's what that means. I would just try a solvent and get your cotton pad wet and just kind of wrap it down the necklace and do that.
And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Louise. So I have a knife, other pieces that are probably from around 1900. Anyway, I did the acetone. There's a lot, this is a knife. There's a lot of rust on this. And around where the blade meets the handle. I mean, any guesses as to what this is made out of and if there's any hope of cleaning that off?
It's probably steel. If it's an old knife with wood, and so it probably is
No wood.
rust.
There's no wood.
If that's the case, I can't speak to how the solvents, you could try, certainly. Test spots are good. I can't speak to how they interact with other types because I'm not an expert in that. It's probably steel, though.
Really? Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. These were, I believe, my grandmother's, and I don't know any more than that, except that my mother had them, and she's gone, and she can't tell me, of course. So, okay.
Sure. I can try to answer. I might not be able to, but I can try.
Okay. If something comes to you.
Okay. Any other shows and tells? Any other questions before we move on?
Yes, I have a brass plate. I don't know whether you can see it. My mother didn't like it, and she used it as a plant stand for several years. Can you see it?
Uh-huh.
Okay. On the back in the center, it says made in China, but there's, where is it? There's a tiny, tiny little stamp that looks like a fleur-de-lis on top with crossed swords underneath, and two, I think they're letters, one beneath the crossed sword and one to the side, but it's way too small. Even with a glass, I can't tell what the letters are.
Is it silver plated?
No, I think it's brass. It's bright gold.
You can, brass and bronze will often have the same maker mark systems as silver does. And so you could probably quickly look that up online and probably find out exactly what that is, because a lot of those maker marks are now online.
Okay, do I clean it the same way that you just demonstrated? I haven't wiped it with acetone yet.
You could, if it's brass, you probably could, just because that's a typical metal that's often used with silver. And so the solvents, just like the previous question, for steel and some other things that are they're steel, what am I trying to say? They're not often mixed with silver, so I can't speak to whether or not the solvents and the slurry will work with that. But because brass is, you can probably try a test spot, and the solvents will probably help clean that, even if it is brass.
Okay, my husband just said, "Oh, use some Brasso on it."
Yeah, we get that. We know.
I think solvents will work better.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next step, I'm going to move on. So precipitated calcium carbonate. This is actually also consumable. Calcium carbonate, I said before, used to be used in toothpaste. It still is in some toothpastes. It's actually a rock. It's found naturally. It's also the main ingredient in some organic things like shells and things like that. It's also technically an abrasive. It's just a very mild abrasive, but technically anything that can clean silver you're still, tarnish is something you're cleaning off, which means you're cleaning off a layer of silver. And actually where we get our calcium carbonate is from, it's used in wine making. That's where we get ours. Wine and beer supplies. So if you have it in your kit, you got a fairly good quantity, 4 or 5 tablespoons usually, teaspoons or tablespoons, I can't remember which. You don't need much. So I'm starting with, I gotta figure out where my camera is here. I'm starting with maybe less than a teaspoon. You don't need much to do a large area, but you want to mix that with distilled water, and you want a paste consistency. And it can be more liquidy. It doesn't have to be perfect. You want something that you can easily control. And so paste consistency, see, I added way too much water, but it'll still work. Paste consistency is something that's easy to control and apply. If it's more watery, it's just going to be more liquidy and make more mess, but it'll still work. So you'll do, it's the same thing with this, what we call a slurry. You're going to mix calcium carbonate with distilled water. Some people add a little bit of detergent. I've never done that. I've heard it's an option. And you're going to use the same technique. You're going to do a small spot test. You're going to have good airflow. Make sure you have gloves on. Make sure your area is protected. You're going to use cotton swabs or cotton pads. And you're going to apply it. Again, you're not going to scrub. But you can actually use circular motions for this. Kind of like this. So I'm kind of going through and I'm just not pressing hard. I'm not scrubbing, but this is with the slurry. Technically, when you use your solvents, that's supposed to get like the easiest layer. The slurry, the calcium carbonate, is supposed to really get in and to that tarnish level. So you should expect to see more dirty cotton pads because you're cleaning more off. And I think I will also say that being more liquidy helps you, depending on what your consistency is and how you're applying it, control it. Use it how you want it to. Use it where you need it to. And I'm, just in that little bit of time, quite a bit is coming off. And I'm going to wipe it down so we can see what it looks like. Wipe all this off because I don't want to, that's just trying to wipe it off with water. And you'll see this is why it gets quite messy and why it gets quite time intensive because I don't want to leave any of this on there. I joked with somebody today that I shouldn't have picked such a big piece because I'm only showing cleaning parts of it and I'm going to have to clean the rest of it. So that I just don't leave it half cleaned and put it back into storage. Okay, so, and I have a pretty good, this is, like I have a pretty good dirty pile going on here. Like this, I've got a lot of coming off. Like this was pretty, part of this platter was pretty dark. And so you just want to take a very soft cloth. Again, that's how you're going to wipe. You don't want anything abrasive. So an old t-shirt, a hand towel, that works to dry it in between. You don't want to leave it wet and you don't want to leave any of the slurry or the solvents on the piece. So let's see. You can see the half that I've cleaned now. A quarter of it is with acetone and the other quarter of it is with the slurry. And you can see the difference. And this has only been about 15 minutes. I didn't quite get rid of that phantom mark from the card because I don't really want to scrub it. I got rid of most of it just from basic wiping. Let me do this and see it a little better. But you can still see it there. That's very annoying to me. And I know Bethany is quite annoyed too because she's a collections manager. So I probably will not try to scrub away that indent mark, that mark from the card, because I'm afraid I don't want to scrub that hard and I don't want to wipe it that hard. So that might be something that we just have to live with because of a mistake that we made leaving the card on top of the platter. But bottom has been wiped, top has not. And stop when you're satisfied, for the aesthetic that you want, for the need that you have. If it's decorative and you don't want to go too far, It's all about being tentative, being cautious. Being cautious is really good, and not being too aggressive. Show and tell. Any questions? How are people feeling about this step? I think people are busy. And I hope you could see, just with the sample that I did, I hope you can see the difference and the impact. I know it's much easier to see in person. Hopefully, we've done justice to it on Zoom and digitally. But if you have the time, it's not complicated. It's, you can be careful and you can take the time and you can do it, and it'll work. It'll be pretty effective. So even just the basic things around your house, you can take care of that. Like I said, again, the other caution and the other word of advice is, every time you clean, that's a small little micro layer of silver, that tarnished silver that you're removing. Eventually, there will be no more silver if it's plated. So we don't do this every day. Even museums, we don't do this. Sitting in storage is how it is.
So we received a comment that the calcium carbonate slurry is great.
Yes, don't scrub. The other disclaimer, I don't know what you're doing at home. I can only advise you as to how I would do it. Just don't be aggressive. Don't scrub it. It's pretty effective with just simple touches.
And Marta, who was working with the brass plate, she showed that earlier. She says that it's still stained, but it's shiny. So yay, things are working.
Well, yeah. And so it's up to you. Whatever is easiest for the time you have, the piece you have, and the effort that you want to put into it. Some people go straight to, I know some folks go straight to the slurry. They skip the solvents. Some people only use the solvents and water. It's based on the result you get, the piece that you have, the quality of piece that you have, and whether or not, the more silver that you have, there's going to be more silver there. If it's been cleaned a lot, you're going to have less layers of silver. I'm trying to look at what my platter, yeah, I can't really tell. It's got some numbers on it, but those are not purity levels. Yeah, it's got stamps. I could look up the stamps and try to figure it out. A lot of the companies use the same formulas, so it probably would be easier to figure out. Like the stamps that I have a crown, I have a fleur de lis, and I have a star. Silver marks are pretty interesting. Okay, I'm going to move on. There's an optional third step. I don't know anybody that actually does this. Oftentimes you can pay a conservator to do this, and we have considered this. Actually, I know that we have folks from Byers Evans. I want to say years ago, 6-7 years ago, we considered cleaning and then coating the silver at Byers Evans, because coating will prevent tarnish for longer. It is expensive and it's time consuming. If we did coat, we would use this Renaissance wax. It's from a museum company. People use this to coat leather. I've seen folks use this to coat wood, furniture. It's just a protection layer. And in museum land, it means that it's easily removable, which is the key for a lot of things. It's not going to stop it though. It's just going to prevent it for a time being. If you choose to do this, it's a wax that you kind of coat with a cotton ball. I mean, it's the consistency of shoe polish. It's kind of creamy. You can put this on, you can test it. Please test it if you use it. We don't ever use this. Conservators sometimes use this, but if we did, this is what we would do. Yeah. There's also almost like an acryloid type polish coating that conservators can use too. That's also something that is kind of expensive. Preventing tarnish. So again, we can't stop it. We can slow it down. But usually it's going to be about environment. What can you do to help the conditions around your silver? Gloves, not only for the solvents, but I know everybody has seen infamous thumbprints in silver. Somebody held it without gloves at one point. There are oils and contaminants and dirt in your hands. This is part of the reason why we wear gloves in museums, because your hands, even though you wash them, they're still oily and dirty and they can damage things. And silver is a perfect example because everyone, like I said, everyone has seen a thumbprint that is then burned into a piece of silver, because that's what the oils in your hands do. Silver cloth is in the kit. Silver cloth is basically impregnated with inhibitors that make it friendly. They kind of fight the contaminants so that they don't get it into silver. So like the silver, oftentimes you'll find flatware boxes that are lined with a felt-like material. That's silver cloth. You'll see pouches for spoons that are made out of this material. Sometimes it comes in different colors. Most often it's brown. So you can use this. Talking about you don't want anything to touch the silver. This would be the only thing because it's treated specifically to touch silver. More than anything, no saran wrap, no newspaper, no other fabric, no real felt, no cardboard, no paper, like our tags even at the museum. Don't let those touch the silver because usually those are acidic and that will speed up the process of tarnish. If you can create a little like microclimate that protects your silver from, that's where like lining drawers and lining boxes, that's exactly why they did that for silverware sets and things like that, the fancy silver, because it helps protect them longer. They're closed up, they're isolated, not a lot of airflow getting in there, so not a lot of contaminants, smoke, or things like that. No extra materials that can touch it. So silver cloth is also expensive. There's a sample of this in the kit that you can kind of sew together and you can make pouches or you can put it in drawers. You can line things with it. There are also, they now make, they have for a while, but they have these anti-tarnish strips. There's also one of these in the kits. This is something, it's similar to silver cloth where it's got materials in there that intercept, which is a fancy play on the title. They intercept the contaminants. So they kind of scavenge the contaminants away from the silver. The problem with this and silver cloth is that they have a lifetime. They wear out. So I think provides protection from tarnish for up to 12 months. Silver cloth, I think, is 2 to 3 years. And then the chemicals are gone. They're used up. So there are things that you can do to kind of prevent, and that involves where you store it. Again, like basements and attics are usually avoided because they're either super hot or super moist and damp. Some people will kind of get a nice box and they'll tuck things into your closet or a drawer. As long as you kind of keep it away from other things, those are the things that you want to try to do. And
So if you are
You're done.
in is, can that brown cloth, and I'm assuming that means the silver cloth, can that be washed?
No, I would suggest not. I don't know. I actually don't know offhand. There is a silver cloth sheet in the kit, but I have never known anybody to wash the silver cloth. So I would say no.
Okay, and then another question that I thought was interesting is, I always thought that tarnished silver was not okay to use for food. Aside from the aesthetics, is there any reason not to use tarnished silver cutlery?
Well, yeah, it's kind of gross. I would agree. I wouldn't use it. I would wipe it with water at least first. I don't know if you remember when I pulled this out, I just rubbed it with my gloves and my gloves came off black. So it's like if you can imagine the dust and other microparticles in the air that are sitting on the silver and then tarnishing and eating away, that's still sitting on the silver. So washing it will at least get rid of the actual particles, but the tarnish is the silver layer. So you can't wash that off. You can at least rinse off the loose stuff.
Okay. Oh, there's another question that just came in. What is wrong about using commercial silver polish?
So commercial silver polish is, it's all about the abrasiveness. Silver commercial polish is sold to be quick and effective, which means it's going to be strong. So whatever I should have bought one so that I could see what the ingredients are and show them. It's not something that's delicate. It's not a process. It's not a chemical that is going to treat your silver nicely. It's going to do the quickest, fastest, easiest way of moving the silver. So that means it's going to eat away more silver than what is necessary. I can't think of any other way to explain it other than that. It's going to eat away more silver than what is needed because it needs to be quick and show results. Whereas the process with the solvents and the slurry, you're testing it and you're being cautious and you're, tentatively trying, certain wipes. That is a process that is slow, because the point is to be careful, but it's also, most things are silver plated. You have to think about the idea of that a piece of metal only has so much silver layer on it. And the silver polishes that you buy in the store are going to eat away more than what we did today.
So real quick, just as we have now reached beyond the 1 p.m. hour, Melissa, if you're able to stay on for some more questions that have come in, that would be great. But overall, if you have to pop off, we understand. We just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope you enjoyed the program. And so we hope that you can connect with us further. As mentioned, there's other upcoming programs and we'll have more how-tos beginning in January.
I can stay on, and because I see a question about silver bags and 3M squares, little anti-tarnish squares that they sell. I thought about talking about plastic. The only thing that I'll say is I've seen some people, my mother-in-law does this. She'll wrap her silver in saran wrap. And then, in 10 years, the saran wrap is all sticky and it's yucky and it sticks to the silver. That you don't want to do that. The saran wrap is a barrier, but it's not a good one. The saran wrap will degrade just like any other material that's not inert. And because it's stuck right onto the silver, you don't want to do that. Bags, there are some people, and I don't know what Bethany thinks. She might disagree with me. Sometimes bags are an in-between solution that's not as bad as some things, but it's better than nothing. I stuff I have at home, I keep in bags because that's easier for me. That somewhat keeps it out of the normal airflow. I look at them often though, and I change them out. I think the problem with sometimes using bags are that people think that that is the solution and don't realize that the bags themselves will also degrade. I don't know, Bethany, would you say anything differently?
I don't know, I'd have to think on it. I mean, yeah, once again, there's pluses and minuses.
Mhm.
So I don't have much to say beyond what you did.
Yeah, I mean, we use plastic. We actually use plastic bags in the museums too for our small things, like small buttons. It's not ideal, but it's cheaper than using an archival paper bag. It's easier for us to contain it in a bag than it is to leave it loose. So it's kind of an in between. It's not great, but it's better than like letting everything jiggle around in drawers and stuff. Hope that answers.
And another question that I saw just come in is, how do you suggest we dispose of the slurry?
I just pour it down the sink.
And can you comment on the dunking method into the foil-lined tub? I'm assuming that's that image that you had showed earlier.
Yeah, it's a quicksilver is what a lot of people call it. It's a special. There's a tub that has an electric current in it, and then it's a special solution that you put in a tub. And like I would love to see it actually in person, but the results are supposed to be as amazing as the picture was. That it's that drastic and that visible of a difference, because we're talking about chemical reactions. That's what we're doing at this point. We're trying to eat away the tarnish, the silver tarnish with chemicals. And that's what the quicksilver does in a much more expensive way. And the PowerPoint is a copy of the slides. The PowerPoint is in the kit. Search, anti-tarnish strips. I know 3M makes some. There's this Intercept company that makes some. Silver cloth you can get online. There are two specific museum archival companies though that we get some certain things, and you can search for nice boxes and things there. Gaylord and University Products. Those links are also, the addresses are in the slides that are in the kit. It's also a reason I'll throw out too that gold and silver are used in computer parts. So if you've ever, my husband does IT stuff, so I see these at home all the time, but there are special computer bags that the parts come in and they kind of look very silvery. The bags are special, like anti-tarnish bags, and they're pretty expensive, but they're silvery because they have, the bags are basically impregnated with the materials that prevent tarnish and contaminants from getting in there. Any other questions? Show and tells? Anything? Well, I hope this helped. I know it was a really quick rundown, and it's easier for people to bring things in and do it in person, but this it sounds like you guys are all trying it out and think it's working. So I'm glad that this format worked and condensing it a little bit, and we can still do this on the computer.
Well, thank you so much for everyone joining us today. And thank you, Melissa. This was really interesting and I hope it was helpful. And if folks have questions, then please feel free to email us either at that co-search email address, or Melissa's email was also included along with some of your presentation materials. So Thanks a lot for attending. It was a little different format doing the meeting style, so that's been fun. And hopefully it recorded okay, because I realized I don't know how to do things like spotlight videos. So it's a learning experience for all of us. So thanks so much. We look forward to seeing you for the future how-to programs. Once again, resuming in January, but check out some of the other programs in the meantime. And Melissa, there's a lot of thanks rolling in. People really enjoyed the program. So thank you so much. And I think we're going to go ahead and call it and turn it off.
Okay. Thank you. Good luck, everybody.